What if I told you the truth you're about to hear was never meant to surface, and that behind every calm smile, every quiet moment, and every carefully crafted story lies a storm of secrets, misunderstandings, and buried emotions finally breaking loose? This is the side no one talks about, the side that changes everything, and once you hear it, you will never see this family the same way again. Cody stood there, with this strange, quiet energy around him, a kind of uneasy calm that did not feel natural at all, and the air felt heavy, as if something massive was about to shift, and everyone watching could already sense it building, like the slow rise of a storm that has been waiting far too long to break. And then he slid out those first words, the ones no one expected to hear from him, not in this lifetime, not after everything that had happened and everything he had done, and he said he wanted to come forward and apologize. And the moment he said it, the world around him seemed to freeze, because the last thing anyone imagined was Cody seeking forgiveness in a way that sounded almost practiced, almost rehearsed, like he had been preparing that moment in the mirror over and over until he could deliver it with just the right softness so he could look like a changed man. But beneath that softness, there was something flickering, something unreadable, something that made people lean in, because the apology from him rarely, if ever, came without a motive. And he said it again, but this time he said he had a list of things he wanted to apologize for. And that alone sent a shiver through the room, because when has Cody Brown ever needed a list to say sorry? When has he ever cared enough to catalog the ways he hurt someone, especially someone like Janelle, who carried so much of the weight of their family for so many years? And then there he was, claiming he wanted to go backwards through everything, piece by piece, and he started with his anger. And he said he was sorry for being so angry and so bitter during the family breakup. But even then, those words felt hollow, like he was apologizing for an emotion, not for the damage that emotion caused. And everyone listening knew the difference, because apologizing for anger is safe. It does not require accountability. It does not require admitting wrongdoing. It only asks him to acknowledge a feeling. And he has always been good at that, acknowledging feelings instead of actions. And watching him speak was unsettling, because his voice carried this unusual softness, this strange calm that did not match the years of dismissal he had shown, the years of resentment, the years of neglect that had piled up like debris inside this fractured family. And then the camera cut to Janelle, and her reaction was shocking, because instead of closing off, instead of questioning, instead of challenging him, she softened. She almost looked relieved. And that is where the suspense truly begins, because she said, "Wow, thank you." And it was like watching a character touch a flame they already know is going to burn them, but they touch it anyway because the memory of warmth lingers after the fire destroys everything. And she said she didn't even recognize him anymore, said he was not the man she had been married to all those years. And yet, despite that, she was moved by his apology. And the question that begins to build here and refuses to let go is whether Cody is deliberately choosing her because she is the easiest one to sway, the one who was left before but always found her way back, the one whose bar for kindness has been lowered so far into the ground that even the faintest This gesture feels monumental, and this is where the tension tightens, because viewers know what Cody is capable of. They have watched his patterns for more than a decade. They have seen him drift from one wife to another, treating them like rotations on a schedule rather than partners in a shared life. And they have watched him use apologies like tools, not like genuine attempts at reconciliation. And now, here he is, starting this new chapter with Janelle, the wife who endured the most distance, the most indifference, the most practical neglect. And she sits there reacting as if his apology is something remarkable, something deeply meaningful, even though all he said was that he was sorry for being angry. And angry men apologize for their anger all the time, but changed men apologize for the pain they caused. And that is the apology he did not offer. And watching her soften, watching her absorb those words like they are water after a long drought is heartbreaking, because there is this silent truth whispering between every frame that she has lived so long without tenderness that even this tiny, incomplete apology feels like hope. And hope is the most dangerous part of this entire moment, because hope can pull people back into places they had finally escaped. And then her daughter warned her, told her to be careful, told her not to trust his sudden change. And that warning hangs like a shadow behind everything happening here. Because daughters see what mothers try to ignore. Daughters recognize patterns that mothers explain away. Daughters are not clouded by memory or nostalgia or the desire to fix something that never truly existed in the way they wanted it to. And while Janelle listens to her daughter, she still leans toward Cody, as if her heart is trying to walk one direction while her instincts pull her in another. And that tug of emotional war is what keeps viewers locked in, because no one knows how far she might lean. And the suspense grows heavier as she says she still does not know who he is, that the man sitting across from her feels like a stranger. But she says it with this tone that suggests maybe that is not entirely bad. Maybe she thinks a stranger could be better than the man she knew before. Maybe she thinks a stranger can change because he is not weighed down by the history, the fights, the bitterness, the neglect. But the truth is, he is not a stranger at all. He is the same man, only wearing a softer face for a moment. And she has not yet seen whether it will last or whether it is simply another performance in a long line of performances. And then she begins to talk about the loss of the family dream, the communal vision they once shared, the idea of raising their children together under one large umbrella of connection and unity. And she mourns it like something sacred, something pure, something that almost existed. And she holds on to the fact that the children are still siblings as proof that not everything was lost. But even that feels fragile, because the siblings are scattered and the relationships vary, and the ones closest to Robin have almost no connection to the rest. And yet Janelle clings to the dream because the dream is what helped her survive the loneliness of plural marriage. The dream allowed her to believe the sacrifices mattered. The dream allowed her to convince herself that losing parts of her marriage was worth it if it meant the greater good was flourishing. And now she sits here, listening to an apology that is not really an apology. And she feels compelled to reevaluate herself, to wonder if maybe she was the one who should have focused more on her marriage. And the tragedy in that moment is almost overwhelming, because everyone watching knows the truth. And the truth is that she could have begged, demanded, pleaded, and Cody still would not have shown up for her, not in the way she needed, not in the way a real marriage requires, because he only showed up when it benefited him, only invested when he felt respected, only gave love when it cost him nothing. And now this tiny apology has her looking inward instead of outward, has her questioning herself instead of questioning him. And that is exactly how emotional manipulation begins, by shifting blame onto the person who already carries too much weight. And then the producers ask Robin what she would do if one of the wives wanted to come back. And the moment that question leaves their mouths, her face freezes, her breathing changes, her posture shifts like she has been stabbed by the very idea of losing control. And she stammers and laughs nervously, and her discomfort is so visible that even the air seems to recoil. And she says she cannot even answer because the thought is too much. And it is clear she is not worried about the family healing. She is worried about the life she has built falling apart. She is worried about losing her position, losing the singular access she has to Cody, losing the quiet advantage she has held since the others left. And all of this builds into a crescendo of tension and uncertainty around whether Cody is truly changing or whether he is simply creating a new version of the same old cycle, a softer mask for the same intentions, a new beginning designed to loop the story back into another storm. The deeper the story went, the more everyone realized that the layers of tension, disappointment, hope, and confusion were far thicker than anyone on the outside ever understood. And as the days passed, the conversations inside the house grew sharper, heavier, and far more revealing than anything the family had dared to speak about before. Because now, every unspoken frustration, every avoided subject, and every buried memory began rising to the surface, forcing everyone to face the truths they had avoided for years. And while some tried to hold on to a sense of unity, others quietly accepted that the idea of togetherness had become something fragile, like a thin thread stretched tightly across a storm that refused to pass. And as the evening stretched on, each person found themselves replaying old choices, wondering if different decisions might have changed the way everything unfolded. But by now, the past was a weight that no one could move, and each attempt at conversation seemed to circle back to the same question of how they reached this place where trust was thin, loyalty was questioned, and every shared moment felt like it had two sides, one spoken and one buried beneath years of compromise, sacrifice, and unresolved hurt. And the tension kept growing until even the smallest comments ignited debates that lasted hours and eventually exhausted everyone involved, because nothing stayed small anymore. Everything connected to something bigger, deeper, more painful, and each person felt like they were carrying a history that no one else truly understood, even though they all lived through parts of the same story. And even in the quieter moments, when the house finally fell still and the lights dimmed, the thoughts that kept everyone awake refused to soften and instead grew louder, filling every mind with doubts about what came next, and whether there was still anything left to save in a situation that seemed broken beyond repair. Yet there was also a strange sense of determination running beneath all the heaviness, a belief that even if things had shattered, they could still make sense of the pieces if they were finally willing to speak the truth without fear or hesitation. And that idea kept them from walking away, even when it would have been easier to avoid the hard conversations. Because for the first time in a long time, it felt like they were opening doors that have remained locked for years. Doors filled with difficult memories, regrets, unspoken expectations, and hopes that had never fully been voiced. And as each door opened, the house felt heavier but also clearer, like the fog around everything was finally lifting enough for everyone to see what had really been happening all along. And in those moments, they realized that healing was not going to come from pretending everything was fine or holding on to old roles. It would only come from admitting the truth, accepting the pain, and facing the reality that their bond had been both a source of strength and a source of hurt. And in that honesty, they started to identify the places where everything went wrong, where misunderstandings grew into resentment, where silence turned into distance, and where fear replaced connection. And though some truths were hard to hear, they were necessary, because without confronting them, nothing would ever change, and the cycle would continue repeating itself until everyone was too tired to keep going. But the willingness to finally talk openly created a small shift, like the first crack of sunlight after a long night. And even though it did not solve anything immediately, it gave them something they had not felt in a long time: the possibility of clarity and the faint hope that maybe they could build something stronger if they approached it differently this time, without pretending, without performing, without carrying the weight alone. And as the conversations deepened, everyone began noticing patterns they had overlooked. Moments where one person reached out and the other pulled away. Moments where small misunderstandings were allowed to grow into deep wounds. And moments where fear of judgment stopped them from admitting what they truly felt. And these realizations stung, but they also created space for empathy, because each person began to understand that no one had tried to hurt anyone intentionally. They were just trying to survive in a situation that demanded more from them than they ever knew how to give. And that acknowledgement became the foundation for new conversations, because once they understood that everyone had been struggling silently, they were finally able to listen without defensiveness and speak without fear. And in those long, vulnerable hours, Things that had once been impossible to say finally found their way into the open, like confessions of exhaustion, confessions of loneliness, confessions of feeling unheard, unseen, or unvalued. And though these words were heavy, they were also freeing, because saying them out loud lifted years of internal weight and allowed everyone to see each other more clearly than they had in a long time. And slowly, piece by piece, started to rebuild a sense of understanding, not the idealized version they once clung to, but something more honest, more grounded, more human. And even though frustration still surfaced and disagreements still rose, they no longer felt like the end of the story. Instead, they felt like steps in the process of finally addressing the truth instead of running from it. And as they continued sharing their feelings, stories, and memories, the tone began to shift from confrontation to connection. Because every truth spoken was a reminder that beneath all the conflict, there was still something holding them together, something worth fighting for, even if it looked different than before. And this fragile sense of progress became the fuel that kept them talking, kept them trying, and kept them believing that maybe, just maybe, they could turn all this pain into a path forward, even if the road was long, uncertain, and filled with moments that would test everything they thought they knew about one another and themselves. And in the end, after every secret was exposed, every truth spoken, and every buried emotion finally released, they all stood, facing a future that would never look the same. But maybe that was the point, because sometimes the only way to rebuild is to let everything fall apart first. And if there is one thing this story proves, it's that healing starts the moment you stop running from the truth and choose to face it head on.